In 5th place, we have the Lesser Key of Solomon, also known as Lemegeton Clavicula Salomonis, or simply Lemegeton. This is probably the book on this list that I'm personally most familiar with. I've definitely referenced it more than once for y'all, since it has some great info on demons and their personalities. For simplicity's sake, I'll just refer to it as the Key today. The Key is an anonymously authored grimoire on demonology that was compiled in the mid-17th century, mostly from materials up to 7 centuries older. It's divided into 5 books: Ars Goetia, Ars Thurgia Goetia, Ars Paulina, Ars Almadel, and Ars Notoria. The Key is based on the Testament of Solomon and the ring mentioned within it that he uses to seal demons. While most of us know specifically the Ars Goetia for, the 72 demons listed in the ranking, and I promise I'll get to the highlight reel in a moment. Now, while I don't have a technical definition for Ars, the Latin term Goetia refers to the evocation of demons or evil spirits, and is derived from an ancient Greek word meaning charm, witchcraft, or jugglery. In medieval and Renaissance Europe, Goetia was generally considered evil and heretical, in contrast to Theurgia and Magia Naturalis, or natural magic, which were sometimes considered more noble. Okay, the 72 demons I promised. I promise I won't bore y'all and list them all, but some notable ones include King Baal, Duke Valfor, King Baleth, Duke Berith, Duke Astaroth, King Asmodeus, King or Count Fine, and Samael. The Ars Thurgia Goetia mostly references Trithemius's Steganographia, though the seals and order of the spirits are different due to corrupted transmission via manuscript. Rituals not found in Stenographia were added, and in some ways conflicting with similar rituals found in the Ars Goetia and Ars Paulina. Most of the spirits summoned are tied to compass points. 4 emperors are tied to the cardinal points of Carnisiel in the east, Amenadiel in the west, Demoriel in the north, and Caspiel in the south. And 16 dukes are tied to cardinal points, intercardinal points, and additional directions between those. There are in addition 11 wandering princes, so that a total of 31 spirit leaders each rule between several to a few dozen spirits. The Ars Paulina is derived from Book 3 of Trithemius's Stenographia and from portions of the Heptameron, but delivered by Paul the Apostle. Elements from the magical calendar, astrological seals by Robert Turner's 1656 translation of Paracelsus's Archidoxes of Magic, and the year 1641 indicate that this portion was written in the later half of the 17th century. Traditions of Paul communicating with heavenly powers are almost as old as Christianity itself, as seen in some interpretations of Corinthians and the apocryphal Apocalypse of Paul. Now, the Ars Paulina is divided into 2 books, the first detailing 24 angels aligned with the 24 hours of the day, while the second detailing the 360 spirits of the degrees of the zodiac. The Ars Amadel instructs the magician on how to create a wax tablet with specific designs intended to contact angels via scrying. And finally, the Ars Notoria contains a series of prayers intended to grant eidetic memory and instantaneous learning to the magician. Pretty dang thorough. In 4th place, we have the Grand Grimoire. It's a black magic grimoire, and for reference, a grimoire is a textbook of magic that typically, includes instructions on how to create magical objects like talismans and amulets, how to perform magical spells, charms, and divination, and how to summon or invoke supernatural entities such as angels, spirits, deities, and demons. In many cases, the books themselves are believed to be imbued with magical powers, although in many cultures, other sacred texts that are not grimoires, such as the Bible, have been believed to have supernatural properties intrinsically. Now, the only contents found in a grimoire would be information on spells, rituals, the preparation of magical tools, and lists of ingredients, and their magical correspondences. In this manner, while all books on magic could be thought of as grimoires, not all magical books should be thought of as grimoires. Different editions date the specific one to 1521, 1522, or 1421, but it was probably written during the early 19th century. Some experts suggest that 1702 is when the first edition may have been created, and a Bibliothèque Bleue version, similar to a chapter book, of the text may have been published in 1750. Now, the introductory chapter was authored by Antonia Venetiana del Rabina, who gathered his information from the original writings of King Solomon. Much of the material of this grimoire derives from the Key of Solomon and the Lesser Key of Solomon, which, our grimoire is attributed to King Solomon. Also known as Le Dragon Rouge, or the Red Dragon, this book contains instructions on how to summon Lucifer, or Lucifege Rofocal, for the purpose of forming a deal with the devil. The 19th century French occultist Eliphas Lévy, author of Dogmes et Rituels de la Haute Magie, claimed the contemporary edition of Le Dragon Rouge was a counterfeit of a true older Grand Grimoire. Gosh, I love petty historical spats. Now, the overall work is divided into 2 books. The first book contains instructions for summoning a demon and for the construction of tools with which to force the demon to do one's bidding. The second book is divided further into 2 more parts: the Sanctum Regnum and Secrets, de l'Art Trésor Magique du Grand Grimoire. The Sanctum Regnum contains instructions for making a pact with the demon, allowing one to command the spirit without the tools required by Book 1, but at greater risk. Secrets contains simple spells and rituals one can employ after having performed the ritual of the first book. Some editions contain a short text between these two parts, known as Le Secret Magique ou Le Grand Art de pouvoir parler aux morts, or in English, The Magic Secret or the Grand Art of being able to speak with the dead, which deals with necromancy. The book describes several demons as well as the rituals to summon them in order to make a pact with them. It also details several spells for winning a lottery, talking to spirits, being loved by a girl, making oneself invisible, and more. This book mentions the 3 greater demons, which are similarly prioritized in the Grimorium Verum. Sidebar: in the English translation of the work, the demons are referred to by the more generic term of spirits, which is a term I know some modern Satanists tend to prefer. The demons that are mentioned are the Emperor Lucifer, Prince Beelzebub, and Grand Duke Astaroth. Now this work also makes mention of 6 lesser demons, and of course I'll mention them all. Lucifer's Rofokal, Prime Minister, Satan Nachia, Commander-in-Chief, Agliarept, Commandant, Fleurity, Lieutenant General, Sargatanas, Brigadier Major, Nebulos, Marshal, and Inspector General.
Coming in at number 3, The House on the Borderland by William Hope Hodgson. Written over a century ago in 1908, this supernatural horror novel was actually praised by the iconic horror writer H.P. Lovecraft. It deals with an evil mansion, supernatural creatures, otherworldly beings, and would be absolutely terrifying on the big screen. The story begins when 2 men on a remote fishing trip in Ireland stumble upon an ancient journal, buried in some ruins near a great abyss. Within the journal is the story of an old reclusive man who inhabited the house that once stood there. Known as being evil for centuries, the home remained empty for many years before our narrator purchased it. The majority of the story is from his account. In this decrepit abode where he lives with his sister and loyal dog, the recluse experiences the mystery and evil of the home. Battling hoofed half-humans called swine things, he brings the reader on a terrifying journey with his exploration of the pit, in which the creatures emerge from. We also get to witness his travels through space and time. Or do we? The best movies are the ones that leave you wondering, was that paranormal or psychological? With this horror story, the answer is up to you. The House on the Borderland provides the perfect amount of ambiguity to leave room for your imagination to run wild. Coming in at number 2, we have The Deep by Nick Cutter. In part 1 of the series, we included The Troop by Nick Cutter, aka one of my favorite horror novels of all time, aka the one book I just talk about all the time and everyone needs to read it. My building has a communal bookshelf in the lobby and it's on there, but I wish I could be like, hey guys, come to this location, get the Troop, but I can't tell you where I live, so don't you want to know? It felt only right that we threw in The Deep by him too, because let's face it, he writes one hell of a horror book. Even Stephen King said The Troop scared him and was old school horror at its best. The premise of the novel is one that somewhat hits close to home right now, I'm sure you can guess why. A strange plague called the Gets is wiping out humanity on a global scale. It's causing people to forget things, small things at first, but it slowly creeps up until the host forgets how to function at its most basic level. Death is certain and there is no cure. But below the unforgiving Pacific Ocean, deep within the Marianas Trench, lives a substance called ambrosia, which could be the key in curing this plague. The US builds a research facility 8 miles underwater, and this is where our novel takes place. The setting alone is terrifying. It's claustrophobic, dangerous, dark, and compounded by thousands of pounds of ocean water just waiting to crush you any moment. Even worse is the evil that lurks down there. Nick Cutter novels aren't for the faint of heart. He describes the most gruesome scenes in unforgiving details and features extreme gore and body horror. Seriously, it gets really dark, but what makes this novel particularly interesting is how unpredictable the story is. You think you're getting an apocalyptic piece, and you are, but there are so many levels to this novel. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Heart-Shaped Box by Joe Hill. Not to be confused with the Nirvana song, but it's certainly a relevant title with this novel's themes of rock and roll. Don't be fooled by this author's pen name, he's actually the son of Stephen King. This incredibly haunting story has the displeasure of living in development hell. So we want what was promised to us, please and thank you. Judas Coyne, an aging death metal rock star with a taste for the macabre, spends his time collecting morbid memorabilia like a human skull and a Mexican snuff film. In his pursuit for more creepy items, he comes across a ghoulish one that he can't refuse, an actual ghost. In a heart-shaped box, a dead man's suit arrives at his house, spirit in tow. After many strange experiences like seeing the apparition of an old man, Jude finally realizes that the evil spirit is out for his blood and has a personal vendetta against him. He found finds out that he was set up and that the spirit will kill anyone who helps him. We get to see the former rock star battle the deadly spirit, and people certainly die along the way. Murder, the paranormal, vengeance, rock and roll, this book has all the makings of a great horror film. Considering the success of the TV adaptation of Joe Hill's Nosferatu, I think we need to give this one a chance. It's time Heart-Shaped Box is resurrected from development hell and made into the amazing feature film it could be. Coming in at 5, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Penned by Alvin Schwartz, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is a series of 3 collections of short horror stories for children. Yes, I say children, but that does not diminish the horror this book houses, which is the reason it was banned from shelves for the majority of the 90s. Alvin Schwartz drew heavily from folklore and urban legends for his stories which are influenced by the likes of T.S. Eliot, Mark Twain, and even Shakespeare. Now, as previously stated, this series is listed by the American Library Association as being one of the most challenged books of all time, specifically in the 90s. Complaints were made about its violence, disturbing subject matter, unsettling artwork, and potential unsuitability for younger readers, and of course, religious concerns. As a book that was originally aimed towards children, the topics of murder, disfigurement, and even cannibalism were met with rage by parents and readers, with one reader even calling it sick, repulsive, and really disgusting. Among the groups who have attempted to ban the book completely are Parents, Women of America, the American Library Association, and the Bulletin of the Center for Children's Books. In 1993, during an interview with the Chicago Tribune, a former elementary school teacher stated, "If these books were movies, they'd be R-rated because of the graphic violence. There's no moral to them. The bad guys always win." What truly haunted readers and made it a tome passed down from generations to generations was the haunting artwork by Stephen Gammell, which features incredibly unsettling black and white images including grotesque sewer rats, a young woman with spiders crawling out of her cheeks, and of course the eerie shot of a scarecrow with a noose hanging around its neck. The book has since been adapted into a movie which was released on August 9th of this year and was met with praise, mostly due to Guillermo del Toro producing the terrifying film. Coming in at 4, literally everything by Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Allan Poe had a knack for creating some of the most horrifying tales and infusing them with visceral dread. Poe is best known for his poetry and short stories, particularly his tales of mystery and the macabre, and is generally considered the inventor of the detective fiction genre and greatly contributed to the genre of science fiction. He was also the first well-known writer to earn a living through writing alone, resulting in a financially difficult life and career before his death on October 3rd, 1849, when he was found delirious and wandering the streets of Baltimore. However, during his years as a writer, his characters and narrators mostly focused on the mentally fragile and the insane, people who are haunted by things that might be literal or even manifestations of their unsound thought processes. Some of his most terrifying works in particular are stories like The Telltale Heart or The Cask of Amontillado, which both retain their powers to petrify readers more than a century after publication. Poe was a writer who managed to tap into the fundamental fear we all have, that the people around us may not be as they seem.
In 3rd place, we have the complete book of Demonolatry. Written by S. Connolly, it boasts telling the reader how to discover powerful rites, magic, and practices that honor Satan and the demons. Now, this text, used by the traditional demonolatry priesthood to train members of their covens, is part workbook, part textbook, and part reference book. It includes thorough chapters on demonology, history, demonic holy days, offerings, prayers, sigils, religious rites, and an introduction to demonolatry magic. Okay, this might be the first book I'm actually tempted to buy for myself, if only just to learn more about demonology history from someone that isn't Ed Warren for once. I love the Warrens and their work, but at the same time, it would be kind of neat to learn from a lens that isn't, as biased in Catholicism. Let's see what else it advertises. Learn how and why the ends, demonolatry sigils, ascension, and many other demonolatry methods have become standard practice among many theistic Satanists. It claims to guide students from pre-initiate to adept. It even delves into the depths of demonolatry, sex magic, necromancy, scarlet elixir rites, and red fluid sacrifice. See, that entire last phrase I can do without. Let me know what y'all think in the comments. Should I bother investing in it or not? In 2nd place, we have the Grimorium Verum. The Grimorium Verum, which is Latin for true grimoire, is an 18th century grimoire attributed to one Alabek the Egyptian of Memphis, who wrote it in 1517. Like many grimoires, yep, it claims a tradition originating with King Solomon. The grimoire is not a translation of an earlier work, with its original appearing in French or Italian in the mid-18th century, as noted already by A.E. Waite, who discussed the work in his book of ceremonial magic in 1911, stating that the date specified in the title of Grimorium Verum is undeniably fraudulent. equivalent, since the work belongs to the middle of the 18th century, and Memphis is Rome. Alrighty. One version of the grimoire was included as the Clavicles of King Solomon, Book 3, in one of the French manuscripts S. L. McGregor Mathers incorporated in his version of the Key of Solomon, but it was omitted from the key with his explanation. That apparently at the end there are some short extracts from the Grimorium Verum with the seals of evil spirits, which, as they do not belong to the Key of Solomon proper, I have not given. For the evident classification of the key is in 2 books and no more. I just love feuds. H.R. Shaw also published some of it in The Secret Lore of Magic, the Book of Sorcerers in 1957. Alrighty, time to break down all 4 books. So book 1 is described as concerning the character of demons, particularly the superior spirits of Lucifer, Beelzebub, Astaroth, while also including the many inferior spirits below them and their invoking sigils. Who wants to hear about what all the lesser spirits can do? Klonek has the power to bring money to those who make a pact with him. Musisin has power over important people and politicians. Frymost has power over women. Kleppoth can help you experience all sorts of dreams and visions. Kill can manifest dramatic situations and changes. Mersild has dominion over long and short distance travel. Clisthert can create confusion or enlightenment, depending on what you need. Serchade can make you see all sorts of natural and supernatural creatures. Hickpath can make a person think of you, no matter how far or distant they may be. Humans can bring you any book you desire. Seagal will cause all sorts of prodigies to appear. Brucissier can teach you the art of necromancy. Guland causes all illnesses. Sergak can create every kind of opportunity for advancement. Montreal can help you move about unseen. Fruitimier prepares all kinds of feasts for you. Huigi Tigras, I tried, causes sleep in the case of some and insomnia in others. Tempting. I could use a good night's sleep. Book 2 is simply described as being of planetary hours, so I'll leave that up to y'all to interpret what you think it means. Book 3 is the preparation of the operator, or more simply put, how to prepare for summoning. A more modern title could be, Demon Summoning for Dummies, or How to Summon a Demon 101. Just saying. Book 4 contains the Sanctum Regnum, called the Royalty of Spirits, or the Little Key of Solomon, a most learned Hebraic necromancer and rabbi. Gee, where have I referenced that before? This book contains various combinations of characters where the powers can be invoked or brought forth whensoever you may wish, each according to his faculty. Long story short, it's a very descriptive and thorough demon summoning Bible, if you will. Once again, I personally do not recommend summoning demons, but if you really feel like you must, this feels like it would produce safer outcomes than, say, a random YouTube ritual or Ouija board. Okay, anything's better than a cursed board, but this one I feel like I can kind of endorse and still sleep at night, you know? In first place, we have the Munich Manual of Demonic Magic. The MMDM, or Libel Incantionum, Exorcism Memoriam et Fascinatorium Variarium, is a 15th century grimoire manuscript. The text, composed in Latin, is largely concerned with demonology and necromancy. Richard Kiekefer edited the text of the manuscript in 1998 under the title Forbidden Rites, a necromancer's manual of the 15th century. Portions of the text in English translation are presented in Forbidden Rites as well, embedded within the author's essays and explanations on the Munich Manual in specific and grimoires in general. The Russian translation of this Latin grimoire was published in 2019, while the first English translation was published in only 2023. There is only one known surviving manuscript of the original Munich Manual, which is almost complete, except for the first 2 folios that describe the beginning of the first ritual. The rest of the grimoire contains complete instructions for the invocation of demons, such as Satan, Lilith, Astaroth, and Samael, as well as the supposed attainment of favors and supernatural powers from them. Some of the spells allow for obtaining the love of a woman, achieving invisibility, acquiring wealth and treasures, or gaining knowledge. The text is accompanied by over 40 illustrations of magic circles and symbols to be used in the ritual. Pages 130 to 133 of the text include a list of 11 demons, similar to the one from the Ars Goetia. Since there are only 11, I suppose I could list them all off. Count/Duke Barbarous, Duke Cassin, President/Count Odious, King Curson, Duke Alugor, Prince Teob, President Fulak, Duke Generon, Marquis Tuvaris, and President Hani. Oh, and Marquis Sukax. I promise I did my best with pronunciations. Most of the text is in Latin, with the exception of 2 appended materials in German and Italian. Makes sense to me. Anyone feel like learning a dead language? Heinrich Himmler's personal grimoire. If you're unfamiliar with the name, Double H was one of the leading members of the Yahtzee party, so my verbiage might get interesting for the next little bit. Double H founded the unearth, which was a pseudo-scientific organization that was active between 1935 to 1945 and devoted to the task of promoting the racial beliefs held by the Yahtzees. Himmler was very much drawn to the occult and tied this interest into his racist philosophy, looking for proof of Aryan and Nordic racial superiority from ancient times. He promoted a cult of ancestor worship, particularly among members of the SS, as a way to keep the race pure and provide immortality to the nation. Viewing the SS as an order along the lines of the Teutonic Knights, he had them take over the church of said order in Vienna in 1939. He began the process of replacing Christianity with a new moral code that rejected humanitarianism and challenged the the Christian concept of marriage. Himmler modified a variety of existing customs to emphasize the elitism and central role of the SS. An SS naming ceremony was to replace baptism, marriage ceremonies were to be altered, a separate SS funeral ceremony was to be held in addition to Christian ceremonies, and SS-centric celebrations of the summer and winter solstices were instituted. Historian Nicholas Goodrick Clark analyzed all of this in his 1985 book, The Occult Roots of Yahtzeism, in which he argued that there were in fact links between some ideals of Ariosophy and Yahtzee ideology. He also analyzed the problems of the numerous popular occult historiography books written on the topic. In Goodrick Clark's review, the Ariosophist movement built on the early ideas of the Volkisch movement, a traditionalist pan-German response to industrialization and urbanization, but associated the problems of modernism, specifically with the supposed misdeeds of Freemasonry, Kabbalah, and let's see if I can get this one right, folks, Rosicrucianism, in order to prove the modern world was based on false and evil principles. The Ariosophist ideals and symbols filtered through several anti-Semitic and nationalist groups in late Wilhelmian Germany, from which the early Yahtzee party emerged in Munich after the First World War. He demonstrated quite a few links between two Ariosophists and Heinrich Himmler. An article titled Schmittler's Forgotten Library by Timothy Ryback, published in The Atlantic, mentions a book from the Dictator's Private Library, authored by Ernst Schertl. Now, Ernst, whose interests were flagellation, dance, occultism, nudism, and quinky things, had also been active as an activist for sexual liberation before 1933. Now, supposedly there is some remnant of Yahtzee magic that can be gleaned from a study of ice magic, and through the work of Blavatsky. Nevertheless, I wouldn't recommend bringing that strain of magic back into the world. Never mind finding Himmler's secret grimoire. No thanks. Next up is less a singular spellbook, but more so any grimoire or spellbook that promises an expertise in B-L-O-O-D magic. Sorry folks, the interwebs are not a fan of the B word, so I have to find substitutes for the redness that pours out of a human wound. When it comes to practitioners of said magic, it's similar, if not exactly the same, as to how the Aztecs wielded power. This might sound kind of cliche, but power like that always comes with a price, which is the reason the Aztecs killed so many people. They avoided the cost by using prisoners, or folks they deemed the lowest of the low. With so much death at ritualistic points where the veil is thin, they could commune or even summon dark entities to the physical realm. So while the idea of forbidden knowledge may seem fun or rebellious or even glamorous, there's things you just shouldn't mess with in the first place. If you're looking for a specific title to avoid, one that I've talked about plenty on here that touches on the subject is the Grimorium Verum. Translated as the Grimoire of Truth, this text has a reputation that goes without saying. It originated in the 18th century and is part of European magical tradition. And it's not for the faint of heart. The Grimorium Verum is essentially a guidebook, but not the kind you'd find on your local bookstore's bestseller shelf. Nah, this is more like a how-to manual for dealing with entities not exactly on the Christmas card list. The inclusion of red fluids in its rituals is one of its most chilling aspects, if you ask me. I don't really like seeing redness anywhere. It's not the kind of magic you see in fairy tales. This is the stuff of dark alleys and ancient rites. The text details ceremonies involving the shedding of said fluids to summon and control otherworldly beings. It's a kind of forbidden knowledge that's been whispered about in hushed tones throughout history. It's just like you hear about it, you don't talk about it. Also, it doesn't stop at fluid exchanges. It's an overall comprehensive guide to dealing with demons. If you want to make a pact with a demon, yeah, this is the place for it. It's got the instructions for creating a pact, specific prayers and invocations. Technically, it's like a step-by-step guide for anybody seeking supernatural assistance. Whether that's a good idea or not, that's up for debate. So why was this banned? And why should you not be reading it? Well, let's just say the church, who we all love, wasn't exactly thrilled about people trying to summon demons on a random Tuesday afternoon. The church authorities saw these texts as a threat, not just to the spiritual well-being of their practitioners, but also to the established order. If there's one thing we know about the church, they don't like being threatened. After all, summoning demons and dabbling in fluid magic doesn't exactly align with a Sunday sermon. Not that I personally agree with the church on most things, but this might be the one time I do. You don't want a demon at Thanksgiving.
Coming at 3, we need to talk about Kevin by Lionel Shriver. Published in 2003, this book is perhaps one of the most haunting books I have ever read, and has continued to linger with me for years, which is exactly why it has a place on our list. We need to talk about Kevin follows a fictional school massacre, a subject matter that has been incredibly prevalent in our society over the last few years, which is absolutely disgusting, through the eyes of the shooter's mother, Eva, and documents her attempt to come to terms with her son Kevin and the murders crimes he committed. Now, what makes this book truly terrifying is that it focuses on the terror of children, the few of us that have maintained their innocence. However, the terror only increases when we come to terms with the fact that the human beings we create become their own people, and sometimes those people become strangers that may go on to commit unlawful acts. Obviously, the idea that our children may grow up one day to be criminals is absolutely terrifying, but what if there's a chance that their psychopathic ways may have been influenced by their development, and that in turn, specifically in the book, Eva's ambivalence towards maternity may have just been the trigger that causes Kevin to become the monster we read about. In 2005, BBC Films acquired the rights to adapt the book as a film, which was helmed by director Lynn Ramsey. In 2011, it was released and starred Tilda Swinton and Ezra Miller, and was, as expected, met with praise from film critics and cinemagoers. Coming in at 2, the Book of the Sacred Magic of Abram Mellon the Mage. This book is a 3-part 15th century book of mystic arts written by Abraham for his son Lamesh. It is unknown when it was first written, but it was translated to English in the year 1900, and quickly developed a reputation for being cursed, of course. Now, the story itself follows an Egyptian mage named Abraham, who taught a system of magic to Abraham of Worms, a Jew in Worms, Germany, presumed to have lived from 1362 to 1458. The story involves Abraham passing his magical and Kabbalistic secrets on his son and tells how he acquired his knowledge. Abraham believed that every person had their own unique personal demons, and through the book we learn rituals that could bring our personal demons under control, and even supernatural feats using sigils and magic, words on a grid. Now, the book's downside, like I previously stated, is that it's believed anyone who possesses a copy will be haunted by spirits from another realm, and in turn will experience terrible luck that will ultimately bring about their demise. Finally, coming in at number 1, The Orphan Story. Written sometime between 1608 and 1615 by Martin de Leon Cardenas, a monk who broke his sacred vow, The Orphan Story is a novel about a 14-year-old Spaniard who leaves Granada and heads to the Americas to seek his fortune. The boy ricochets around the Spanish Empire, from the high society fiestas of Lima to the mephitic mines of Potosi, and even goes on to witness Sir Francis Drake's attack on Puerto Rico. So why exactly is this book on our list? It doesn't sound that horrifying. Well, this book wasn't actually published until 2018, and that's because every time publishers tried to release it, the people involved kept dying under mysterious circumstances. A Peruvian academic named Belinda Palacios rediscovered the manuscript hidden in the archives of Hispanic Society of America in 1965. However, when she began working on the book, colleagues quickly warned her of the curse that was said to linger within the pages, and in turn she was deterred by the unusual deaths that surrounded the manuscript. Most of the deaths were caused by car accidents and sudden unexplainable illnesses, which of course informed the rumour that the book was cursed, and why it took 400 years for a brave soul to see the project through to completion.
Number 5 on this list is Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. You may be familiar with this title because there was actually a movie adaptation that hit the screen super recently. Back in 2019, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark came out in film format, but this movie was based off of a book, and for the longest time this book was super banned. SCMP says this one stands out on the list because unlike the other banned or challenged books, Scary Stories is not political and it doesn't contain any references to drugs or sex. So why were these collections of horror stories so controversial? Some of the stories could be pretty scary and parents felt that they were inappropriate for their children, which is fair considering these are stories about being buried alive, cannibalism, and way more. But for many people, the real issue was the artwork by Stephen Gamble, an incredibly talented illustrator who no doubt caused nightmares for thousands of children since the book's first publication in 1981. So literally, guys, this book got banned because it was too scary. Think about that for a second. The author literally did too good of a job at making a horror book that people thought no one should read it. If I was the guy who wrote this, then I wouldn't know whether to take that as a compliment or like a criticism, to be honest. The people who banned this thing couldn't hold it down forever though, because at the end of the day, it is some great literature for those who love horror. Number 4 on this list is Fire and Fury. Now, this one I felt like I had to bring up because it happened really recently with the former president of the United States. Skyscape says Wolf's gossipy tell-all describes a dysfunctional presidency perpetually in chaos, zoning in at one point on the day the FBI director James Comey was fired. Comey heard about it on TV. Not all of Wolf's claims are accepted as truth, of course. Trump said he didn't authorize Wolf's White House access and didn't speak to him for the first book. Trump's lawyer Charles Harder sent a cease and desist letter threatening a libel lawsuit in an effort to stop publication. Fire and Fury sold out in its first day of a release as a result. By 2021, Trump was speaking to Wolf for Landslide, Wolf's third book in the trilogy. There were countless scandals during the Trump administration, so I feel like this one was just another notch on the belt. Either way though, the government literally did everything in their power to try and get rid of it and stop us from being able to buy it. The opposite happened though, and because it got so much attention, it flew off the shelves faster than they could print them.
Okie dokie folks, are you ready for some more fun cult stuff? Okay, so you've all heard about Scientology, right? The cult that pretty much owns Tom Cruise and a bunch of other celebrities. Well, it turns out that their original founder wrote a book that he alleged caused people to take their own lives. And if that isn't magically inclined in some way, I don't know what is. It prompts reflection on the power dynamics between the written word, belief systems, and the vulnerability of the human psyche. So what is it about this text that can drive individuals to the brink? Well, apparently it's the allure of the unknown, the manipulation of belief systems, maybe a combination of factors that pushes people beyond the boundaries of reason. So we've talked about this guy before, L. Ron Hubbard. He was discussing the Atlantis civilization, and he claimed to have gained this knowledge through his own research and experiences. Am I gonna pretend like I know how he experienced those things? Nope. But here's the thing. This piece of writing has been almost entirely erased from the internet. If you're more tech savvy than I am, feel free to add links in the comments section, but outside of venturing into the dark web, I couldn't find a copy of this specific work anywhere, or a listing on any official record of all of this. The erasure of almost all mentions of this book from the vast expanse of the internet only adds to the mystery in my mind. In this crazy digital age where I can Google whatever I want, the ability to expunge a work from the digital realm raises quite a few questions about the extent of control over the narrative, not to sound like my university profs. It's as if the book itself has become this elusive specter, lingering in the shadows of cyberspace. Now, I'm not completely oblivious to the control that present-day Scientology has in our society, but it's really scary to see it in practice. Like, their attempt to erase any traces of this work raises so many ethical questions about the control of information. In this digital age, where information is considered a cornerstone of freedom, the deliberate suppression of a narrative kind of is like, what the heck? Like, what other forbidden books are there? Just like waiting in the shadows that I don't even know about, waiting to disturb some minds out there. Well, there's the Shams al-Ma'arif, or Shams al-Ma'arif wa Lata'if al-Awarif, which is a 13th century grimoire centered on Arabic magic and has claimed to be a manual for achieving esoteric spirituality. I apologize from the bottom of my heart if I butchered that pronunciation anyway, I promise I did practice. It was written by the scholar Ahmed al-Buni, who wrote it while living in Algeria. He passed around 1225 Common Era. It was written by the scholar Ahmed al-Buni, who wrote it while living in Algeria, and he passed around 1225 Common Era. Now, the book is a patchwork of bits and pieces of the author's authentic works, and texts by other authors. Scholars like Ibn Taymiyyah have criticized the book and labeled al-Buni as a deluded double worshipper. Good to know that across all religions over time, some things never changed. Now, in terms of more modern examples, that was a common assumption from Ed and Lorraine Warren. You know, the demonologist that I quote all the time. Look, I believe half of what they investigated was real, the other half was them making a living, which at the end of the day, I have to give some respect to. Well, minus viewing alternative lifestyles outside of Christianity as a sin. Okay, pardon me. Sorry, I get a little sidetracked. In contemporary form, the book consists of 2 volumes, the Shams al-Ma'arif al-Kubra and the Shams al-Ma'arif al-Sughra, with the former being the larger of the two. The first few chapters introduce the reader to magic squares, and the combination of numbers and the alphabet that are believed to bring magical effect, which the author claims is the only way to communicate with jinn, angels, and spirits. The table of contents that were introduced in the later printed editions of the work contain a list of unnumbered chapters, which stretched to a number of 40 by the way. However, prior to the printing press and various other standardizations, there were 3 independent volumes that circulated, each one differing in length. While being popular, it also carries a notorious reputation for being suppressed and banned for much of Islamic history, ergo how it found its way to our list today. Don't read it. However, it continues to persist in being read and studied up to present day, despite its questionable veracity and negative implications. Some Sufi orders, such as the Naqshbandi Haqqani order, have recognized its legitimacy and use as a compendium for the occult and hold it in high respect. Now, another title by the same author, the title having been translated to the Source of the Essentials of Wisdom, is considered its companion text. In terms of translation, although the overall formal translation to English hasn't really happened yet, there have been numerous renditions of a few of the more popular rituals found within the main treatise, as well as those that line its accompanying text. So, don't bother, don't go near it. Okay folks, I think I'm gonna end today with the Munich Manual of Demonic Magic. The MMDM, or Liber Incantationum Exorcium et Fascinatorium Varium. Let me try that again. The MMDM, or, well, let's see if I can get this folks, Liber Incantationum Exorcimorum et Fascinatium Variarum, is a 15th century grimoire manuscript. The text, composed in Latin, is largely concerned with demonology and necromancy. Richard Kiefer edited the text of the manuscript in 1998 under the title Forbidden Rites, a necromancer's manual of the 15th century. Portions of the text in English translation are presented in Forbidden Rites as well, embedded within the author's essays and explanations on the Munich Manual in specific and grimoires in general. The Russian translation of this Latin grimoire was published in 2019, while the first English translation only came out last year. Now, there is only one known surviving manuscript of the original Munich Manual, which is almost complete except for the first 2 folios that describe the beginning of the first ritual. The rest of the grimoire contains complete instructions for the invocation of demons such as, let's see, Satan, Lilith, Asaroth, and Samael, as well as the supposed attainment of favors and supernatural powers from them. Some of the spells allow for obtaining the love of a woman, achieving invisibility, acquiring wealth and treasures, or gaining knowledge. The text is accompanied by over 40 illustrations of magic circles and symbols to be used in said rituals. So, for example, page 130 to 133 of the text includes a list of 11 demons, similar to the Ars Goetia, and since there's only 11, I guess I could list them off. So we've got Count/Duke Barbarus, Duke Cassin, President/Count Otius, King Curson, Duke Alugor, Prince Tub, President Volak, Duke Generon, Marquis Tuveries, President Hani, and Marquis Sukax. I promise I did my best. Most of the text is in Latin, which is not a language I speak, with the exception of 2 appended materials in German and Italian. So let's see, we got messing with demons and manipulation of others to your will? Yeah, no thanks, that sounds like a recipe for disaster.
The Oracles of Nostradamus, penned by Michel de Nostradam. This collection of prophecies has been linked with numerous calamities, including natural disasters and wars. Some believe that merely reading it can bring about bad luck or even losing your life. The prophecies of Nostradamus have been a topic of fascination and debate since their first publication in the late 16th century. Despite being written centuries ago, many people still turn to these prophetic writings for insight into the future. But who was Nostradamus, and how accurate were his predictions? Michel de Nostradam, or Nostradamus, as he is more commonly known, was a French physician and astrologer who lived during the Renaissance period. He gained popularity for his medical writings and later turned to writing almanacs that contained his predictions for the future. Nostradamus's prophecies were written in a cryptic format using a mix of historical references, astrological symbolism, and wordplay. The style of writing has led to different interpretations of his predictions, with some claiming that they have accurately foretold major events such as the rise of Hitler. However, many critics argue that these prophecies are vague and open to various interpretations, making it easy for people to find connections with past events. They also point out that Nostradamus' predictions were often written after the said event had already occurred, leading to accusations of them being nothing more than cleverly crafted hindsight. Despite the criticisms, the fascination with Nostradamus and his prophecies continues to this day. People still turn to his writings for insight into current events and potential future disasters. Some even believe that his predictions are divinely inspired and hold the key to unlocking the mysteries of the universe. Regardless of one's beliefs, it cannot be denied that Nostradamus was a highly enigmatic figure whose prophecies have stood the test of time. Whether they were truly accurate or simply coincidental remains a mystery that will continue to intrigue and captivate us for years to come. So the next time you come across a mention of Nostradamus and his prophecies, take a moment to ponder on the enigma that surrounds this infamous figure. Who knows, maybe one day we will finally uncover the truth behind his cryptic writings, things and unravel the mystery of the future. Next up, we have the ominously named Book of the Dead, an ancient Egyptian funerary text. It's fascinating, but let's just say you wouldn't want it on your bedside table. The Book of the Dead is a collection of ancient Egyptian funerary texts that were used to guide and protect the deceased in the afterlife. These papyri were typically buried with the dead and contained a variety of spells, incantations, and instructions for navigating through the afterlife. In ancient Egypt, it was believed that passing was not an end, but rather a transition to the afterlife. The Book of the Dead was an essential part of this journey as it provided guidance and protection for the deceased. The spells and incantations in this book were believed to have magical powers that could help the deceased overcome obstacles and challenges in the afterlife. They also contained instructions on how to properly perform rituals and ceremonies that would ensure the deceased's successful transition to the afterlife. This book was not a single text, but rather a collection of spells and texts customized for each individual. The spells are often tailored to fit the specific needs and beliefs of the deceased and their family. Interestingly, these papyri were not only reserved for the elite or wealthy. Even commoners could afford to have their own Book of the Dead, albeit with fewer spells and illustrations. The Book of the Dead also played a significant role in shaping ancient Egyptian beliefs and practices surrounding passing and the afterlife. It provided a sense of comfort and reassurance that their loved ones would be taken care of in the afterlife. In addition to its religious and spiritual significance, this book also served as a valuable source of historical information. It provided insights into ancient Egyptian beliefs, rituals, and customs, and has greatly aided in understanding this fascinating civilization. Today, many original copies of this text are housed in museums around the world, while others have been lost to time or destroyed. However, its impact on ancient Egyptian culture and its enduring legacy still fascinates scholars and individuals alike. It serves as a testament to the power of beliefs and rituals in shaping our understanding of life, passing, and afterlife. The Book of the Dead continues to capture our imagination and remains an integral part of ancient Egyptian culture. Its enigmatic spells and vivid illustrations continue to intrigue us, offering a glimpse into the beliefs and practices of one of the world's oldest civilizations. So while you may not want it on your bedside table, the Book of the Dead remains a captivating and essential piece of ancient Egyptian history. The fascination with passing and the afterlife is a common theme among many cultures throughout history.
Number 3 on this list is Lawn Boy. This story, written by Jonathan Iveson, is one of the most challenged books in America in 2021, and honestly, folks, it really shouldn't be. Esquire says Lawn Boy is the big-hearted story of Mike Munoz, a young Chicano driver working on a landscaping crew in Washington. As Mike fights against the soul-crushing forces of classism and racism to achieve his American dream, he also comes to terms with his sexual identity. Though the novel was written for an adult audience, teens fell in love with Lawn Boy, leading it to be awarded an Alex Prize, an award bestowed by the Young Adult Library Services Association to books written for adults that resonate with teens. Critics slammed the book for the LGBTQ content and sexually explicit material, pointing to a sexual encounter between two young men. Iveson has received hate mail and death threats as a result of campaigns to ban his book, but he remains uncode. When I look at the wealth of great literature that enlightened souls have sought to ban through the ages, how could I feel anything but pride to be listed among them, he wrote. To those who would ban my book and burn me at the stake because they are ashamed of their own past experiences or uncomfortable with any non-binary sexual identifications, I hope you find healing. And literally, guys, shout out Jonathan on that one. When I found out that this book was something that people were trying to ban in literally 2021, it kind of blew my mind. Like, sometimes I think that the world is past stuff like that, and I do want to say that I think most people are. Like in America, 87% of people don't think that books should get banned. So at the very least, regardless of their views on things, they think that there should be a freedom of speech or writing. Either way, the government hasn't actually forbidden you from reading this book. People tried to do that. And I say, you shouldn't listen to them. Number 2 on this list is Animal Farm. So if you wanted to read Animal Farm now, then you probably wouldn't have too hard of a time getting your hands on a copy. But back in the day, this wasn't always the case. In fact, the government for a long time wanted nothing to do with the book. Spyscape says Animal Farm was a target of censors and spies. The satire revolves around farm animals who rebel, hoping to create an equal society. Instead, they end up living under Napoleon, a dictatorial pig. The USSR saw it as a critique of its politics and banned the book. The UAE briefly banned Animal Farm because of its talking pigs seen to be against Islamic values. The CIA, meanwhile, turned it into a propaganda tool and funded an animated movie of the same name, although spies changed the book's ending. If we think about it logically for a second, it makes sense why a government wouldn't want Animal Farm to get read by the general public. This is especially heightened when we think about it from the perspective of a controlling government like the USSR was. In their brain, they probably saw this book as a bit of a threat. The public reads it and then starts getting some sneaky ideas about how they're gonna revolt and start their own new country with a totally new government. And then this even goes a step further because the CIA started pushing this book and marketing it as something against the USSR. What was a fictional story turned into this whole political thing caught between the two biggest superpowers in the world when it was released. And number 1 on this list is The Anarchist Cookbook. This book has had a roller coaster of a life since it was written. Big Thing says, since it was first written in 1971, much of its information is out of date. But some topics, like how to make improvised bombs, don't have an expiration date. The book provides instructions for making LSD and tear gas, primers on how to operate various firearms, how to sabotage different kinds of infrastructure, and writing on anarchist philosophy. The book was written by William Powell, a manager of a bookstore in Greenwich Village. Powell quit his job, however, to write the Anarchist Cookbook. My motivation at the time was simple, said Powell in an article for The Guardian. I was being actively pursued by the US military, who seemed single-mindedly determined to send me to fight and possibly die in Vietnam. Its countercultural violent message proved popular today. It is sold in excess of 2 million copies. It should come as no surprise that the book is infamous and controversial, but the kinds of criticism it attracts varies depending on the source. Governments across the world clearly have a negative opinion of the book. It does, after all, advocate for violent civil disobedience. The Anarchist Cookbook is banned in Australia. In the UK, possessing the book, though not illegal itself, has often been used as evidence in terrorism cases. A teenager was accused of and later acquitted of a plot to assassinate British National Party members in 2008. In 2017, a 27-year-old who had traveled to Syria and possessed a copy was accused of being a terrorist. It turned out that he had merely printed a copy of the Anarchist Cookbook for use in a role-playing game in a university society. So clearly the government does not like this book at all. I think it's a bit much for people to be accused of certain things just by owning the book, but I also kind of see why it happens based on the contents of the text. Just be aware that if you pick this book up, then the government may start keeping tabs on you.
Number 5. The Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage. The Book of Abramelin, or more formally, the Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage, is a Jewish magic text that is thought to date back at some point in the 14th or 15th century. Now, it wasn't this initial publication that gave it such a notoriety. There wasn't really a lot of book reviewing going on back then. It was when it was upheld by the 19th and 20th century magicians who made up the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which kind of sounds like a fake bad guy from an RPG, but is a British secret society dedicated to the practice, research, and upholding of old occult magic ways. Can't be that secret though, because I'm talking about it. One of the founders of the Golden Dawn, one SLM Matters, created the first ever English translation of the book in the 1890s, drawing from a 17th century French translation. Mathers' translation became the definite magic text of the 19th century, eventually helping inspire Aleister Crowley, the legendary occultist and fixture of one of the best Ozzy Osbourne songs ever. There's all kinds of spells and magic inside the text. Some highlights include spells on how to conjure someone into a donkey, summon a monkey to do your bidding, how to bring forth spirits to fetch you goods. The key point in the text, however, is an epic multi-month ritual that, if performed correctly, will allow the sorcerer to commune with their guardian angel other half. The book posits that everyone's guardian angel is another part of their essence, a spiritual other. The ritual involves, I don't really know how to say this politely. You have to get blissfully intimate with the angel, and once this honeymoon period is over, the caster then has to summon up and conquer unredeemed spirits of the infernal regions of hell to conquer them, and then will be able to be master of the spirit domain. That all sounds pretty complicated though, honestly, so all things considered, maybe it's for the best that this one's locked away. I don't really need to mess with magic, that's above my pay grade, and I'm not looking to get too intimate with my significant other guardian angel anytime soon. But if you're looking for more true tales of terror, fake frightening fibs, cursed relics, ancient evils, ancient cryptids, aliens, conspiracies, ghouls, goblins, and way more of this guy, Top 5 Scary is the only place to be. So stay subscribed, make sure you hit that little bell so you don't miss a scream, but, and I know this is a big ask, do that at the end of this video, because I got 4 more cursed books coming for you right now. Number 4, the Codex Gigas. When it comes to cursed and demonic books, the Codex Gigas is one of the biggest ones around. Like, literally. Codex Gigas translates to giant book, which isn't a very scary name, but when you see the size of this behemoth, it starts to make a bit more sense. The thing is massive, 2 feet long. While giant oversized illuminated manuscripts were fairly common around this era, this one stood out for its immense size and also the impressively scary rumors surrounding the cursed text. It's occasionally been dubbed Satan's Bible due to the interesting legend behind its origin. Now supposedly the story goes that a monk by the name of Herman the Recluse, which same honestly. Anyway, Herman was condemned to death for heresy and was to be walled up alive and starved. In a desperate plea to save himself, Herman tried to convince the prior and the abbot that if he could pen a manuscript to honor God's glory and contained all of human knowledge and history in one night, that he could be let free. The abbot agreed, thinking that this was, of course, an impossible task. Well, he didn't know that Herman was the John Wick of penmanship, who wrote until midnight, wearing his fingertips down, and in a moment of desperation, made a prayer to Lucifer, and asked for his eternal soul in exchange for the book's completion in order to repent for his heresy. I totally get it, you know? I've done some pretty crazy things trying to write my script in time for a deadline too. I sold my soul earlier this week to get Top 5 UFOs in on time. I get it. Now, not poking any holes in your logic here though, Herman, but I will say maybe selling your soul to the devil is part of the reason you got into this mess, because that actually sounds a ton like heresy. A variation of the legend states that Herman worked for years on the manuscript, day and night, but still asked for the devil's assistance anyway, the lazy bastard. Anyway, the legend states that Satan signed the Bible with an illustration of himself. The ego on that guy. The book contains a birth of information. Like they said, it was supposed to be everything humanity had attained up to that point. Now these days, the Codex Gigas is preserved in the Natural Museum in Sweden, where you can admire the line work of Herman the Recluse and his ghost author, Satan.
Next on our list is the Picatrix, an ancient Egyptian grimoire filled with magical and astrological secrets. Supposedly, it can inflict madness on those who dare to decipher it. The Picatrix is a mysterious and intriguing grimoire that has fascinated scholars and occultists for centuries. The Picatrix is a mysterious and intriguing grimoire that has fascinated scholars and occultists for centuries. Its origins can be traced back to ancient Arabic texts believed to have been written in the 10th or 11th century. The name Picatrix is derived from the Latin word picus, meaning tar, and trix, which translates to maker or creator. This name perfectly encapsulates the book's contents, as it is said to have the power to create and manifest magical effects. The Picatrix is divided into 4 books, each containing various chapters and sections. The first book primarily focuses on cosmology and astrology, exploring the relationship between celestial bodies and magic. It delves into the planetary influences and their corresponding herbs, stones, and metals that can be used in magical rituals. The second book delves deeper into the practical application of magic, providing instructions on creating talismans and amulets for specific purposes. It also discusses the use of planetary hours and astrological calculations to enhance the effectiveness of spells. The third book is dedicated to exploring natural magic, which involves harnessing the powers of nature and its elements for magical purposes. This section covers topics such as alchemy, dream interpretation, and the creation of various magical objects. And the final book delves into advanced forms of magic, including evocation and invocation of spirits, demons, and other entities. It also provides instructions on how to summon and control these beings for personal gain. Despite its reputation as a dangerous and powerful grimoire, the Picatrix is also revered for its rich knowledge and insights into ancient magical practices. It has been studied and referenced by many occultists throughout history, including famous figures such as Cornelius Agrippa and John Dee. The Picatrix continues to intrigue and captivate modern readers, readers, sparking debates about its true intentions and power. Whether it is a powerful tool for manifesting magic or simply an elaborate collection of ancient knowledge, the Picatrix remains a significant piece of occult literature that continues to inspire and fascinate today. So if you dare to delve into its secrets, be warned. You may encounter madness or enlightenment along the way, so why not take a chance and unravel the mysteries of the Picatrix for yourself? Who knows what hidden knowledge and power it may hold? Coming up next is the Voynich manuscript. Its unknown language and peculiar diagrams have baffled scholars for ages and is said to bring misfortune to those who attempt to decode it. The Voynich manuscript is one of the most mysterious and enigmatic books in history. It has been the subject of countless studies, theories, and speculations, yet its true meaning remains elusive. Believed to have originated from Central Europe in the early 15th century, the manuscript was named after Wilfred Voynich, a Polish book dealer who acquired it in 1912. Many have attempted to decipher the manuscript's unknown language, but all have failed. The text is written in a unique script that has not been seen in any other known language, adding to the mystery and intrigue surrounding it. Some scholars believe that the text may be a code or cipher, while others argue that it is an entirely new language created by the author. The illustrations and diagrams in the Voynich manuscript are equally perplexing. They depict unknown plants, astrological symbols, and even images of naked women bathing in mysterious pools. Some theories suggest that the manuscript may hold secrets related to alchemy or herbal medicine, while others believe it could be a religious or philosophical text. Despite numerous attempts to decipher its contents, this manuscript has managed to keep its secrets hidden. Many have devoted their entire careers to studying it, with some even claiming to have made breakthroughs in understanding its language and illustrations. However, these claims have yet to be proven, and the mystery of the manuscript continues. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Voynich manuscript is its rumored curse. According to legend, anyone who attempts to decipher it will be met with misfortune and even losing your life. While this may seem far-fetched, it is a fact that many of the manuscript's previous owners have faced tragic endings. Despite its mysterious nature and rumored curse, the Voynich manuscript remains an object of fascination for scholars and enthusiasts. Its unique language and cryptic illustrations continue to ignite curiosity and inspire new theories in attempts to unravel its secrets. Will the mystery of the Voynich manuscript ever be solved? Only time will tell. In the meantime, it remains a testament to the enduring power of human curiosity and our quest for knowledge. Who knows what secrets may lie within its pages waiting to be discovered. And finally, we have the Grand Grimoire, also known as the Red Dragon. This text is believed to contain powerful demonic rituals and is kept locked away in the Vatican's secret archives. The Grand Grimoire is a mysterious and ancient text that has captured the imagination of many for centuries. It is said to contain powerful demonic rituals and spells, making it a highly sought after book by those interested in the occult. According to the legend, the Grand Grimoire was written by King Solomon himself, who was known for his wisdom and mastery over demons. It's said that he wrote the book with the help of a demon named Asmodeus, who was bound to his will by a magical ring. However, there are conflicting theories on the origins of the Grand Grimoire. Some believe that it was actually written in the 16th century by a man named Honorius of Thebes, while others believe that it was a compilation of various texts from different authors. Despite its disputed origins, the Grand Grimoire has gained a reputation as one of the most powerful and dangerous books in existence. It's even rumored to have been used by Napoleon Bonaparte himself to gain power and success on the battlefield. Due to its perceived danger and influence, the Grand Grimoire has been closely guarded and kept locked away in the Vatican secret archives. It's said that only a select few have access to it, and even then, they must go through rigorous testing and training before being allowed to study its contents. The secrecy surrounding the Grand Grimoire has only added to its allure, with many believing that it holds the key to unlocking great power and knowledge. However, some caution that the rituals and spells within its page should not be taken lightly, as they could have serious consequences for those who attempt to use them.
Number 5, the yellow wallpaper. Okay, the yellow wallpaper. I first read this book when I was in 5th grade, and I do know that it is a lot of required reading for a lot of people. Like, you'd read it in 9th or 10th grade. So you may be thinking now, oh my god, V, why would you put this on the list? It's not cursed, we can all read it. It's a weird book. And it's a good book, a really flipping good book. And I know that we have a lot of videos on this channel of books that are cursed that you cannot read and that you will never get the chance to read. So I wanted to create a video about books that are going to mess up your head and twist your psychology into a complete knot. But if a complete mind twist doesn't interest you and you would prefer hearing about the more supernatural aspects of Top 5 Scary, just search books on our channel's search bar and you will get a plethora of videos to choose from. Today, I really want to talk about things that we can all relate to, but if you are interested in some reading that will mess your mind up and leave you scared and thinking for the rest of your life, definitely stick around because we are about to get into some really cool and twisted reading. So number 5 and 4 now because I rambled too much. Let's try this again. The Yellow Wallpaper. This book is a masterclass in imagery and descriptive devices because wow, you feel like you are in this room. It follows a woman who is placed into a room that is lined wall to wall with yellow wallpaper, and slowly, page by page, she begins to go insane, describing more outlandish and detailed scenes being played out in the lines of her wallpaper. Throughout the story, her descriptions get so much more in-depth and twisted, and you begin to feel like you are going insane with her. Every single word, every single thing that she is imagining, you are seeing full on face to face. It's like you're looking it in the eyes. And I have aphantasia, so I actually cannot visualize anything in my head. Like you say, think of an apple, and I don't see an apple, it's just darkness. But somehow this book was able to surpass my biological evolution, and I was able to imagine everything, every word, every description. It was being burnt into my eyelids. And there are very few books that can do that for me, which is how you know that this is an insanely weird and well-written story. I really recommend giving this a read. It will mess with your mind and you will never ever want to have yellow wallpaper again, which, okay, interestingly enough, this book actually made me want to have yellow wallpaper when I was in the 5th grade. So I don't know, maybe this job is like where I was destined to work because I don't think many people after reading this book would yearn so desperately to have yellow wallpaper.
Number 3. The Grand Grimoire. Our next entry has been formally referred to as the Gospel of Satan. It's different from Satan's Bible, and is said to be a cursed book whose knowledge had to be sealed away to protect humanity. So this might be the most dangerous book ever published after Hop on Pop. The Grand Grimoire was said to have been penned by a priest in the 16th century who was possessed by a litany of demons who compelled the man to put their knowledge to paper. Acting as a scribe for the demons, the man wrote everything they knew about dark incantations, spells, instructions on how to cast rituals, how to bind a demon to make it do your bidding. Wait, a demon wrote this book? A demon gave instructions about how it wants to be bound to a human and serve humans? That's a freaky little demon. That's not all though. There's a step-by-step recipe for a little necromancy if you're down to dabble in some dark arts and make some bones dance to your rhythm. The book really covers all the fun stuff you've been told not to do. Now it's not all brimstone and hellfire too. There's rituals on how to manipulate your luck, how to conduct a seance, and I think this is adorable. But there's even ways to make people love you in the book. Now, a little dating tip from your friends at Top 5 Scary. I will say, if you need a demon's help to make them like you, that might not be the most successful relationship, but you do you. Don't let me get in the way. Now, if all of this is sounding pretty appealing, and I don't blame you because it all does sound really cool, just know that the book is considered high treason. Even so much as cracking the spine is considered equivalent to selling your soul, so maybe hold off on that Amazon order for a bit. Besides, because of the book's cursed reputation, the original copy is said to be locked away in the Vatican's famous secret archives, and no matter how many times you ask, they're not going to let you look at it, even if you say you just want to take a quick little peek at the illustrations. I know, so unfair. Ugh, I don't even have any late fees. Let me take the book out. Number 2, the Untitled Grimoires. You think a book with a name is scary? Imagine a book without a name. Coming up next on our list of haunted nighttime reading is the Untitled Grimoires. It was so scary they couldn't even deign to give it a name. The books are said to originate from a Wiccan high priestess named Persephone Adarasta Irene, who has one of the coolest names I've ever heard. She recorded a book of her family's spiritual history. These manuscripts record Persephone's Wiccan history that she reworked all through her adult life. The first book contains around 250 pages of spells, incantations, curses, enchantments, and some information on gems, planets, rites, potions, and exorcisms. Basically anything and everything that a fledgling sorceress or warlock could ever possibly want. The second book is a little more light, the sequel's a bit of a letdown. It's just alchemy, chemistry, cures, perfumes, and tonics. Now, the first book is believed to be the one to carry the curse, as Persephone's spells are believed in Wiccan culture to contain more power than most other records due to her embodiment of her own soul inside the book. They say all authors put a bit of soul in their work, and it seems as if the Wiccan High Priestess took that a bit more literally than most of us do. These books would eventually find their way into the possession of one Alice Montserrat, a close working associate of Aleister Crowley, who you know from earlier in the video as one of the most famous practicers of the occult and lover of white horses. Montserrat left an inscription in the first page of the book, warning to all of those who open it, "To those not of the craft, the reading of this book is forbidden. Proceed no further, or justice will exact a swift and terrible retribution, and you will surely suffer at the hands of the craft." This was written in several languages to make sure it came across to just about anybody who opened the book. Now, I'm kind of unclear on that. I don't know, some of the old words, the old English is kind of confusing me. Does that mean the book should be read? Like it's good? I don't know. Not really getting that. And finally, coming in at her #1 spot today on demonic dictionaries and evil literature is the infamous Lesser Key of Solomon. Make no mistake from the title, even though it's a Lesser Key of Solomon, it is not a lesser evil. It's an anonymously authored grimoire on demonology, so not written by Solomon. It's also known as Clavicula Salomonis Regis, or Lemegeton, is a grimoire. It's a book of magic that gained significant prominence in occult literature. Now, the grimoire is attributed to King Solomon, the biblical figure renowned for his wisdom and mastery over supernatural forces. It's believed to have been compiled in the 17th century, though it draws upon earlier occult tradition and texts. The Lesser Key consists of several sections, or books, each focusing on a different aspect of magic and summoning. The most well-known is the Ars Goetia, which represents descriptions and instructions for evoking 72 demons or spirits, each with its own unique powers and abilities, kind of like Pokemon. These demons are said to be bound by King Solomon and can be summoned and controlled by skilled practitioners. Other sections of the Lesser Key of Solomon includes fan favorites like the Ars Theurgia Goetia, Ars Paulina, Ars Almadel, and Ars Notoria. These sections delve into topics such as angelic invocations, the use of talismans and amulets, and rituals for obtaining divine knowledge and wisdom. Now, the grimoire has had a profound influence on various occult and magical traditions, including ceremonial magic, demonology, and the practice of spirit conjuration. It's been studied and referenced by countless practitioners, scholars, and scary YouTubers throughout history. Now, goes without saying, this is a potentially dangerous text. The act of summoning and working with entities described in the grimoire is not for the faint of heart, and really should be saved for those with a bit of spiritual expertise under their wizard hat.
Starting off this countdown, we have the Lesser Key of Solomon. The Lesser Key of Solomon is a cursed grimoire that is said to contain summoning spells for over 72 demons. That's right, this book can help you summon 72 demons. And no one knows who wrote it. What we do know is that this book contains a bunch of compiled texts from the 17th century. Some of these texts tell the reader how to conjure spirits or demons, and then it tells you how to control these entities that you summon. No matter how cool you may think that is, you don't ever want to own this book. This book is apparently so cursed that anyone who keeps a copy of it will die or experience constant bad luck. One person who owned a copy of this book reported the book's pages turning on its own. Another time, the book violently flew across the room at them. They also heard strange whispers coming from the book, and on a number of occasions have seen shadow people. The only way to end this curse is to burn all the pages in the book and then get rid of all the ashes. Seems like a lot of work, so maybe just don't go out seeking copies of it. Although we don't know who wrote the book, legend has it that King Solomon originally wrote it for his son. He then asked him to bury it with him in his grave. But apparently when he was getting prepared for burial, a group of Babylonian philosophers found the book, and one of them got a vision from an angel. The angel told him to hide the book from the unworthy. So he decided to cast a spell on it to keep it from getting into the wrong hands. And that's how the book got its curse. But for some reason, copies of the book can be found on the internet. So if you want to tempt your fate, check it out. But seriously, actually maybe don't. Like, all we need this year are demons taking over the world because some Dumbo tried to summon them. In our fourth spot today, we have the Grand Grimoire. Otherwise known as the Gospel of Satan, this book has been named one of the most terrifying occult books in history. So it was apparently written in the 16th century by a man that was possessed by the devil. Yeah, you heard me correctly. The book is filled with instructions on how to summon demons or raise spirits from the dead. Reading this book and following any of the spells is said to be equivalent to selling your soul to the devil, which is why the original book is kept locked away somewhere in the Vatican's secret archives. They don't want anyone messing around with this book. But you can find versions of this book online and for sale, but it won't be the original cursed text. Either way, I'm not risking it.
Number 3, I have no mouth and I must scream. I don't even know where to start with this one. This book left me with such a disturbed and upset feeling right into the pit of my stomach. The story follows a group of 5 people, the last people alive in a post-apocalyptic Earth, that are being eternally tormented in a computer called AM. Okay, so the first time I read this, I was pretty confused, up until I would say probably the second page, and then I started getting really into it. But I think you're supposed to be confused so you can really settle into the story and the world and all of the ideas within. The book centers around 5 characters who are essentially stuck in an advanced AI computer called AM in a post-apocalyptic world. The computer is vengeful and torments them eternally. They have been stuck here, unaging, essentially immortalized for 109 years. Allegedly. It's kind of hard to know for sure because the computer like messes with their mind and time a lot. Every single day for these humans is filled with the computer psychologically, physically tormenting them in every way imaginable, in insanely disturbing and creative ways. The book ends with the character who we are hearing the story from realizing that the only way to end the torment they are experiencing and to hurt the computer in some way as like revenge is through their death or by taking away Am's toys. Somehow he ends up being the last one alive. I won't spoil it exactly, but everyone else is dead except for him. Am is very upset by this, so Am ensures that for the rest of eternity, he, the last alive, will suffer every day and will never be given the chance to escape through death like the others. He is essentially turned into a living blob, lacking limbs and appendages, lacking ears and eyes and a mouth. He's just a mass of goo. His eye sockets are described as being filled with a white fog. He is stuck unmoving for the rest of his eternal life. Which of course brings us to the final line of the book and the title, I have no mouth and I must scream. So yeah, this is an incredibly disturbing book. Cursed, I guess you could say. I would definitely recommend giving the story a read. It is short, but the impact it will have on you is nothing less than long-lasting and permanent. Number 2, The Lottery. I first read this book a couple of months ago in July. It was an English camp retreat that I read it at, which I won't get too much into, but let's just say I did not enjoy that too much. I was one of 2 girls in a group of 18 guys, and they were all years younger than me, and most of them weren't funny and mansplained everything to me, which is my worst nightmare, and it was painful. But actually from the teachers, it was a very educational experience, and I learned a lot, and one of the things I learned about was this story, The Lottery. It is a short story written by the famous Shirley Jackson, and it definitely makes you think. Upon first read, it definitely gives off Hunger Games vibes, and I'm sorry I said vibes, but there is no other way to explain it. Same vibes. It is a very surprising read. I think you'll be surprised by the ending, but upon rereading it, you kind of realize how brutally obvious every piece of foreshadowing was. But upon the first read, you're left with an uneasy feeling. You do not expect what's to come, especially up until the 3rd page. You really don't realize how uneasy everyone is in the story. You hear about a tradition that other towns are considering canceling. You hear about these very young people going around in groups of friends and picking up pebbles that are being collected in piles after being released from school. You hear casual conversation being exchanged through neighbors. You don't hear the underlying unease that is being sown throughout the crowd of people. Someone goes up to the front of the crowd, and next to a dinky yet looming box, they begin to explain that they will be drawing names, like every year in this town's annual lottery. The reader thinks, oh, a game, a lottery, a winner. This is exciting, this is cool, this is great, but you do not expect the ending. And for me, it was kind of a whoa moment where I had to take a step back and reevaluate where the book had shifted to. It's a great book filled with eerie imagery and explanations, and another that will absolutely stay burned into your mind. Number 1, The Landlady. This book is by one of my all-time favorite authors, Roald Dahl. Responsible for creating some of the most famous stories of all time like Matilda, The Witches, James and the Giant Peach, The BFG, Lamb to the Slaughter, and so many more, it's no surprising that he would be capable of creating a truly disturbing short story, very worthy of being on this list. So the landlady follows a boy named Billy who is starting a new job in a new town. He looks for a place to stay the night when all of a sudden he sees a beautifully charming and warm house advertising itself as a bed and breakfast. It is run by a friendly but odd lady, and only 2 guests had previously stayed there in the past 3 years. We know there have only been 2 guests thanks to a guest book that the old woman makes every single guest who stays there sign, which she tells Billy, and when Billy is signing it, he recognizes the 2 names, which are the only ones on it, but he can't remember where he recognizes them from, though he feels like they were both famous for the same thing, like they were in a newspaper or something for the same thing. I won't spoil anything because uncovering the truth yourself is far more exciting. Throughout the book, you feel an uneasy sense of dread, discomfort, and frustration as the naive main character innocently believes everything he is being told and does not seem to comprehend the idea that he could be in danger. It is an extremely captivating book, and I find the descriptions to be very lively. The dialogue is eerie and sets the tone of the story masterfully. This book leaves you with a sinking feeling like no other. If you are looking for a read that will stay in your mind every time you check into a small B&B, which, you know, it's not very common anymore, this is definitely the book for you.
Number 5, The Complete Book of Demonolatry. Written by S. Connolly, it boasts telling the reader how to discover powerful rites, magic, and practices that honor Satan and the demons. This text, used by the traditional demonolatry priesthood to train members of their covens, is part workbook, part textbook, and part reference book. It includes thorough chapters on demonolatry, history, demonic holy days, offerings, prayers, sigils, religious rites, and an introduction to demonolatry magic. Okay, this might be the first book I'm tempted to buy for myself. If only just to learn more about like demonology history from somebody that isn't, like Ed Warren for once. I love the Warrens and their work, but at the same time it would be neat to learn from a lens that isn't, as biased in Catholicism. Alright, let's see what else it advertises. Learn how and why the ends, demonolatry sigils, ascension, and many other demonolatry methods have become standard practice among many theistic Satanists. It claims to guide students from pre-initiate to adept, and even delves into the depths of demonolatry, schmex magic, necromancy, scarlet elixir rites, and red fluid sacrifice. See, that last phrase I can do without, but let me know what y'all think in the comments. Should I bother investing in it or not? Now before anybody asks, well, why should you leave this book alone on Halloween? That just so happens to be when the veil between our world and the spirit world is the thinnest, and you don't want to accidentally summon a demon when you're just learning how to. Not a fun idea. Number 4, Mein Kampf. Alrighty folks, this is where I'm using demonic as more as an adjective instead of actually talking about demons. Also, this is a book that should never be consumed in general. More like exist in a museum so that we, don't turn into a case of those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it. This is an autobiography of Germany's infamous, actually Austrian-born dictator whose name I can't say on here. Its title means my struggle or battle because, organizing genocide is hard work. Didn't you know? Everybody clap for this man's tenacity, his perseverance, his sheer determination. Hard work makes dreams come true, don't you know? Ugh, the prick. The book, released in 2 volumes, is in reality the evil dictator's case for anti-Semitism. He outlines exactly how he came to be as he was, before putting forth his racial and political views and describing his vision for the future of Germany. From a technical point of view, this book is apparently overly long, repetitious, and poorly written. Seeing as it was written by one of the world's most evil men in history, it was deemed just cause for banning it in Austria and Russia. Interestingly enough, Germany held the copyright over this book until 2016. Until then, printing and dissemination of the work was strictly banned. But now that it's, in the public domain, Germany has lifted the ban and actually released a new edition with nearly 2,000 pages and 3,500 annotated notes. I'm not sure this particular book should be available, simply because it was written by the man I cannot name. The fact that he killed 6 million people for no fault of their own is unforgivable enough, but the conditions he kept them and many more in is making me sick to my stomach. So we're gonna move on before I start venting and get off topic today.
Coming in our 3rd spot, we have the Book of Sacred Magic. Back in the 15th century, a mage named Abramelin decided to gift his son with a book filled with mythical curses. I doubt it was on his son's wish list, but hey, it's the thought that counts, right? Anyways, in the 1900s, the book was translated to English, and that's when people realized it was probably cursed. Why? Well, throughout the book, it talked about rituals on how to control your demons. Abra believed that every person had their own demon, not just a metaphorical one, but a literal one. This book taught you on how to control your demon. It also talked about how to perform other supernatural acts. In the end, it was believed that whoever owns a copy will be haunted by spirits, and bad luck will befall on them. In fact, a number of people have reported bad luck and hauntings after reading this book. So it seriously isn't worth it. Like, I'm not getting cursed. No thank you. Coming in at number 2, we have the Book of Soiga, otherwise known as the Book That Kills. So I suggest you don't put it on your reading list. Basically, this book was created in the 16th century and is a Latin essay all about demonology. To this day, we still don't know who wrote it. But what we do know is that John Dee, who worked as an advisor for Elizabeth I, got the book in 1580. He spent the rest of his life trying to decipher the whole thing. He quickly realized that this book was no good. It talked about how to conjure demons and had a list of spells and stuff like that. Rumor has it that one section of the book he could not decipher at all. It was a page with tables filled with random Latin letters. But he was determined to decipher it. So him and his pal, who was an occultist and medium, apparently summoned the archangel Uriel. The angel apparently spoke through his friend and said that this book was made when Adam entered paradise. And also, apparently only Archangel Michael is the only one who can decipher the full book. The angel also warned them that the book was cursed, and anyone who deciphers the meaning of the coded tables would die 2.5 years later. Well, in the end, this book drove John to madness, and he died. After his death, the book was lost for the longest time, until 1994. That's when not one, but 2 copies were found. Crazy. But let me know in the comments below, if you had the opportunity, would you risk your life deciphering this book? I'm a little curious to see what it's about, but also I don't want to die, so maybe not. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Devil's Bible. The Devil's Bible, otherwise known as the Codex Gigas, is this massive 310-page book said to harness evil and negative energy. It was discovered in 1648 when a Swedish army looted the city of Prague. During this time, they discovered this book, which is considered the largest medieval book in the world. Like I said, it was composed of 310 pages, but it is also 36 inches tall, 20 inches wide, 8.7 inches thick, and weighs 165 pounds. In fact, the book did contain 320 pages at one point, but the last 10 pages were cut out and removed. More on this later, stay tuned. So now, there's this really creepy legend surrounding this book. Legend goes that the book was written by a monk, but this monk broke his spiritual vows, and he was sentenced to be sealed behind a brick wall and left to die. The night before his death, he realized he would not be able to finish his book, so he summoned Lucifer and asked him to complete it for him. In return, he offered him his soul. So legend goes that this book was finished by the devil himself. Now, remember those pages that I said were removed? Well, apparently they were removed for a very important reason. Some people believe that those pages told people how to summon the devil. And obviously, if those pages fell into the wrong hands, it would be bad. To make this book even creepier, some pages are filled with drawings of the devil and other demonic entities. One page contains a 19-inch frightening drawing of Satan. And apparently, the book also contains a bunch of dark rituals and tests, like how to perform exorcisms. You know, in case you summon the devil or a demon, then you just want to take it all back again.
Number 5. The Necronomicon. To ease our way into this list, let's begin with a supposedly completely fictional book, created by the famous writer H.P. Lovecraft. Also referred to as the Book of the Dead, the Necronomicon appears in several of Lovecraft's stories, where it was supposedly written in the early 1700s by an Arabic man named Abdul al-Hazrad, who was a devotee of the demonic deities Yog-Sothoth and Cthulhu, before he was apparently horribly devoured by an invisible demon in front of a presumably very confused and very terrified crowd. After this, the work was apparently translated and passed down over the years, having versions made in Greek, Latin, and English, while simultaneously being banned by various political and religious figures throughout history. Lovecraft was very sparing with the details about the contents and appearance of the book, believing that the mystery made it more frightening, though sections of it are quoted in his stories, such as the famous couplet appearing in The Nameless City, which goes, "That is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strange aeons even death may die." Over the years, Lovecraft was asked several times if the Necronomicon was in fact a real book, but he would always answer that it was not, and that the idea came to him in a dream. Of course, a number of paranormal enthusiasts believe that this dream was actually a vision given to Lovecraft by the demonic entities, and over the years, many famous libraries who people believe are hiding copies of the book, such as the Vatican Library, often receive requests from eager readers wanting to know the secrets of life and death, supposedly enclosed within the pages of the Necronomicon. The Book of the Dead appears in many other works of fiction, with Lovecraft's approval, as he believed that different authors using common allusions helped to build a background of evil verisimilitude. Is the Necronomicon a real book, or is it just a piece of fiction that has managed to take on a life of its own? Well, it depends who you ask. Number 4. The Lesser Key of Solomon. The Lesser Key of Solomon is a grimoire compiled in the 17th century from materials that were already centuries old at the time of the book's original publication. The volume is divided into 5 books, one of which contains instructions on how to grant the practicing magician an eidetic memory and the ability to instantly learn materials. Another of the books teaches the user how to contact angels using a wax tablet and a method known as scrying. 2 of the other books describe the 24 different angels and their relation to the 24 hours in the day, and the 360 spirits of the degrees of the zodiac. However, the Lesser Key's most famous book is known as Ars Goetia, which contains 72 sigils, each representing a different demon, as well as instructions on how to summon the 72 demons, and even how to control them. Before you go searching for a copy at Barnes & Noble, consider the following. The Lesser Key of Solomon is apparently a cursed book, with anyone who owns a copy of it reportedly being subject to constant bad luck, or in some cases, even death. Some owners of the book have reported seeing the pages turning by themselves, and even flying across the room, while hearing whispers and seeing dark shadow people. If this warning has reached you too late, and you have already fallen victim to this horrible curse, the good news is that it can apparently be broken by burning all the pages and disposing of the ashes. No one knows for sure who wrote the Lesser Key of Solomon. Some of course believe that it was written by King Solomon himself as a gift for his son, but others believe that it was actually dictated by some of the 72 demons in order to give themselves a means of crossing over to our world. Whoever actually wrote it, I hope that it was done with the purpose of helping us control the dark forces that are knocking on the door of reality, and not the other way around.
Number 3, the Grand Grimoire. It is a black magic grimoire, and for reference, a grimoire is a textbook of magic that typically includes instructions on how to create magical objects like talismans and amulets, how to perform magical spells, charms, and divination, and how to summon or invoke supernatural entities such as angels, spirits, deities, and demons. In many cases, the books themselves are believed to be imbued with magical powers, although in many cultures, other sacred texts that are not grimoires, such as the Bible, have been believed to have supernatural properties intrinsically. The only contents found in a grimoire would be information on spells, rituals, the preparation of magical tools, and lists of ingredients in their magical correspondences. In this manner, while all books on magic could be thought of as grimoires, not all magical books should be thought of as grimoires. Different editions date the specific one to 1521, 22, or even like as early as 1421, but it was probably written during like the early 19th century. Some experts suggest that 1702 is when the first edition may have been created, and a Bibliothèque Bleue version, similar to like a chapter book, of the text might have been published in 1750. The introductory chapter was authored by Antonio Veneciana da Rabina, who gathered his information from the original writings of King Solomon. Much of the material of this grimoire derives from the Key of Solomon and the Lesser Key of Solomon, which are grimoires attributed to the king of the same name. Also known as Le Dragon Rouge or the Red Dragon, this book contains instructions on how to summon Lucifer or Lucifer Focal for the purpose of forming a deal with the devil. The 19th century French occultist Eliphas Lévy, author of Dogmes et Rituels de la Haute Magie, claimed the contemporary edition of Le Dragon Rouge was a counterfeit of a true older Grand Grimoire. And I love petty historical spats. Once again, the overall work is divided into 2 books. So the first book contains instructions for summoning a demon and the construction of tools with which to force a demon to do one's bidding. The second book is divided further into 2 parts, the Sanctum Regnum and Secrets de l'Art Magique du Grand Grimoire. The Sanctum Regnum contains instructions for making a pact with the demon, allowing one to command the spirit without the tools required by book 1, but at greater risk. Secrets contain secret spells and rituals one can employ after having performed the ritual of the first book. Now some editions contain a short text between the 2 parts, known as Le Secret Magique ou Le Grand art de pouvoir parler aux morts, or in English, The Magic Secret or the Grand Art of Being Able to Speak with the Dead, which deals with necromancy. The book describes several demons as well as the rituals to summon them in order to make a pact with them. It also details several spells for winning a lottery, talking to spirits, being loved by somebody else, making oneself invisible, and more. This book mentions 3 greater demons, which are similarly prioritized in the Grimorium Verum. Sidebar: in the English translation of the work, the demons are referenced by the more generic term of spirits, which is a term I know some modern Satanists prefer. The demons that are mentioned are the Emperor Lucifer, Prince Beelzebub, and the Grand Duke Astaroth. Now this work also makes mention of 6 lesser demons, and of course I'll mention them all. Lucifer Revocal, Prime Minister, Saint Nachia, Commander-in-Chief, Aglia Rept, Commandant, Fleurety, Lieutenant General, Sargatanas, Brigadier Major, Nebulos, Marshal, and Inspector General. I had fun with that. Number 2, the Grimorium Verum. I just mentioned this, didn't I? The Grimorium Verum, which is Latin for true grimoire, is an 18th century grimoire attributed to one Ali Bek the Egyptian of Memphis, who wrote it in 1517, and like many grimoires, it claims a tradition originating with King Solomon. This grimoire is actually not a translation of an earlier work, with its original appearing in French or Italian in the mid-18th century, as noted by A.E. Waite, who discussed the work in his book of ceremonial magic in 1911, stating the date specified in the title of the Grimorium Verum is undeniably fraudulent since the work belongs to the middle of the 18th century and Memphis is Rome. One version of the grimoire was included as the Clavicles of King Solomon Book 3 in one of the French manuscripts S. L. MacGregor Mathers incorporated in his version of the Key of Solomon, but it was omitted from the key with its explanation. At the end there are some short extracts from the Grimorium Verum with the seals of evil spirits, which as they do not belong to the Key of Solomon proper, I have not given, for the evident classification of the key is in 2 books and no more. Idris Shah also published some of it in the Secret Lore of Magic, Book of the Sorcerers in 1957. Alrighty, time to break down all 4 books that you should not be touching on Halloween. Book 1 is described as concerning the character of demons, particularly the superior spirits of Lucifer, Beelzebub, Astaroth, while also including the many inferior spirits below them and their invoking sigils. Alright, who wants to hear about what all the lesser spirits can do? Claunek has the power to bring money to those who make a pact with them. Musissin has power over important people and politicians. Freemost has power over women. Yeah, okay, pal. Klepoth can help you experience all sorts of dreams and visions. Kill can manifest dramatic situations and changes. Mersild has dominion over long and short distance travel. Klistert can create confusion or enlightenment depending on what you need or want. Serchad can make you see all sorts of natural and supernatural creatures. Hickpax can make a person think of you, no matter how far or distant they may be. Humotz can bring you any book you desire. Siegel will cause all sorts of prodigies to appear. Fruxisier can teach you the art of necromancy. Guland causes all illnesses. Surgat can create every kind of opportunity for advancement. Morail can help you move about unseen. Frutimier prepares all kinds of feasts for you. Hoi Tigaras causes sleep in the case of some and insomnia in others, and hey, tempting, because I could use a good night's sleep right about now. Book 2 is simply described as being of planetary hours, so I'll leave it up to y'all to interpret what you think it means. Book 3 is the preparation of the operator, or more simply put, how to prepare for summoning. A more modern title could be Demon Summoning for Dummies, or How to Summon a Demon 101. Book 4 contains the Sanctum Regnum, also called the Royalty of Spirits, or the Little Key of Solomon, a most learned Hebraic necromancer and rabbi. This book contains various combinations of characters whereby the powers can be invoked or brought forth whensoever you may wish, each according to his faculty. Long story short, it's a very descriptive and thorough demon summoning Bible, if you will. Once again, I personally do not recommend summoning demons, but if you really feel like you must, this feels like it would produce safer outcomes than say like a random YouTube ritual or Ouija board, but still, stay away on Halloween. You don't know what's gonna happen, I don't know what's gonna happen, it's not fun. Number 1, The 120 Days of Sodom. Written in Bastille during the French Revolution, the author was interrupted when the prison was stormed by insurgents and never finished the story, but 120 Days remains amongst the most notorious works of literature, featuring depraved fetishes, red fluid-soaked sexual group parties, torment, and under the age of consent, bad, icky schmecks thing. Look, I'd say the actual terms if I could. Trust me, it would make my life so much easier, but I've gotta play by the interweb rules. Described as very sexual and erotic, its plot revolves around the activities of 4 wealthy libertine men who spend 4 months seeking out the ultimate sexual gratification through group sex fun parties, sealing themselves away in an inaccessible castle in the heart of the Black Forest in Germany with 4 madams and a harem of 36 victims, mostly young people. The madams relate stories of their most memorable clients, whose crimes and punishments inspire inspire the libertines to likewise and increasingly harm their victims to their eventual deaths. Now, the novel was never completed. Its first chapter was written according to Say's written plan, but the subsequent chapters are in the form of rough drafts and notes, often consisting of graphic descriptions of the novel scenes. The book was first published in Germany back in 1904, and then banned across Europe for most of the 20th century. A 1975 film adaptation by Pier Paolo Pasolini was also banned in several countries. South Korea has banned the book twice this century, and now it can be sold there only in a sealed plastic cover to adults 19 or over. Once again, don't read it. In number 5, we have Shams al-Maharif. Shams al-Ma'arif, or Shams al-Ma'arif, wa Lata If'a al-Rif, is a 13th century grimoire centered on Arabic magic and claimed to be a manual for achieving esoteric spirituality. I apologize from the bottom of my heart if I butchered that pronunciation in any way. I promise I did practice. It was written by the scholar Ahmed al-Buni, who wrote it while living in Algeria, and he passed around 1225 Common Era. The book is a patchwork of bits and pieces of al-Buni's authentic works and texts by other authors. Scholars like Ibn Taymiyyah have criticized the book and labeled al-Buni as a deluded devil worshipper. Good to know that across all religions over time, some things never change. In terms of more modern examples, that was a common assumption from Ed and Lorraine Warren, probably the most famed demonologists of all time. Personally, I believe half of what they investigated was real, and the other half was just them making a living, which at the end of the day, I have to give some respect to. Well, minus viewing alternate lifestyles outside of Christianity as a sin. Pardon me, I got a little sidetracked there. In contemporary form, the book consists of 2 volumes, the Shams al-Ma'arif al-Kubra and the Shams al-Ma'arif al-Sugra, with the former being the larger of the two. The first few chapters introduce the reader to magic squares, and the combination of numbers and the alphabet that are believed to bring magical effect, which the author claims is the only way to communicate with jinn, angels, and spirits. The table of contents that were introduced in the later printed editions of the work contained a list of unnumbered chapters, which stretched to a number of 40. However, prior to the printing press and various other standardizations, there were 3 independent volumes that circulated, each one differing in length. While being popular, it also carries a notorious reputation for being suppressed and banned for much of Islamic history, ergo how it found its way to our list today. However, it continues to persist in being read and studied up to the present day, despite its questionable veracity and negative implications. Some Sufi orders, such as the Naqshbandi Haqqani order, have recognized its legitimacy and use as a compendium for the occult and hold it in high regard. Another title by the same author, the title having been translated to the Source of Essentials of Wisdom, is considered its companion text. In terms of translations, although a formal translation into English has not happened yet, there have been numerous renditions of a few of the more popular rituals found within the main treatise, as well as those that lie in its accompanying text. In number 4, we have the Grand Grimoire. It's a black magic grimoire, and for reference, a grimoire is a textbook of magic that typically, includes instructions on how to create magical objects like talismans and amulets, how to perform magical spells, charms, and divination, and how to summon or invoke supernatural entities such as angels, spirits, deities, and demons. In many cases, the books themselves are believed to be imbued with magical powers, although in many cultures, other sacred texts that are not grimoires, such as the Bible, have been believed to have supernatural properties intrinsically. The only contents found in a grimoire would be information on spells, rituals, the preparation of magical tools, and lists of ingredients and their magical correspondences. In this manner, while all books on magic could be thought of as grimoires, not all magical books should be thought of as grimoires. Different editions date the specific one back to 1521, 1522, or 1421, but it was probably written during the early 19th century. Some experts suggest that 1702 is when the first edition may have been created, and a Bibliothèque Bleue version, similar to a chapter book, of the text may have been published in 1750. The introductory chapter was authored by Antonia Venetiana del Rabina, who gathered his information from the original writings of King Solomon. Much of the material of this grimoire derives from the Key of Solomon and Lesser Key of Solomon, which are grimoires attributed to King Solomon. How'd you know? Also known as Le Dragon Rouge, or the Red Dragon, this book contains instructions on how to summon Lucifer, or Lucifège Rofocal, for the purpose of forming a deal with the devil. The 19th century French occultist Eliphas Lévy, author of Dogmes et Rituels de la Haute Magie, claimed the contemporary edition of Le Dragon Rouge was a counterfeit of a true older Grand Grimoire. And I love petty historical spats. The overall work is divided into 2 books. The first book contains instructions for summoning a demon, and the construction collection of tools with which to force a demon to do one's bidding. The second book is divided into, two further parts. The Sanctum Regnum and Secrets, de l'Art Magique du Grand Grimoire. The Sanctum Regnum contains instructions for making a pact with the demon, allowing one to command the spirit without the tools required by Book 1, but at greater risk. Secrets contain simple spells and rituals one can employ after having performed the ritual of the first book. Some editions contain a short text between these two parts, known as Le Secret Magique ou Le Grand Art de pouvoir parler aux morts, or in English, the magic secret or the grand art of being able to, speak with the dead, which deals with necromancy. The book describes several demons as well as the rituals to summon them in order to make a pact with them. It also details several spells for winning a lottery, talking to spirits, being loved by a girl, making oneself invisible, and more. This book mentions 3 greater demons, which are similarly prioritized in the Grimorium Verum. Sidebar, in the English translation of the work, the demons are referenced by the more generic term of spirits, which is a term I know some modern Satanists prefer. The demons that are mentioned are the Emperor Lucifer, Prince Beelzebub, and the Grand Duke Astaroth. Now this work also makes mention of 6 lesser demons, and of course I'll mention them all. Lucifer Joafocal, Prime Minister, Satan Nachia, Commander-in-Chief, Agliarept, Commandant, Fleruti, Lieutenant General, Sargatanas, Brigadier Major, Nebiros, Marshal and Inspector General.
Number 3. The Book of Soiga. This 16th century treatise on magic, written in Latin, came into the possession of the former advisor of Queen Elizabeth I and famous mathematician, astrologer, alchemist, and occultist John Dee in the year 1580. The book was filled with spells and instructions on how to summon demons, but most curious of all were the several pages which were covered in more than 40,000 letters, all seemingly distributed at random. John Dee spent 2 years trying to crack the code that would allow him to read the book, but could not. In 1582, his colleague and fellow occultist Edward Kelly offered to perform a seance using a special mirror which would allow the Archangel Uriel to speak through him. They performed the ritual, with Dee recording the dialogue between himself and the angel in his spiritual diaries. Dee began the conversation by asking, "Is my Book of Soiga of any excellency?" The angel replied in Latin that the pages of the book were indeed special and were revealed to Adam by the good angels of God in the Garden of Eden. When asked if he could help them translate the tablets of letters which comprised the final 36 pages of the book, the angel responded that only the Archangel Michael had the power to decipher it. Dee would spend several more years failing to decipher the final pages of the book, while concerned at the rumors that the book was cursed and would bring death to anyone who translated it within 2.5 years. The book eventually went missing and was considered lost to history, with the only references to it being in Dee's various diaries. This changed in 1994 when a John Dee scholar searched the British Library. It had been searched many times before, but all the previous searchers had made the mistake of looking for it under the letter S for Soiga, instead of using the book's alternate title described in one of Dee's diaries, Alderia Sive Soiga Vocor. The scholar found 2 copies of the book using this method. In 2006, a mathematician was able to use a computer to analyze the 46,656 letters of the tables and discover the different keyword that each coded page used. This also revealed that the spelling errors between the 2 books proved that they were both actually copies of an even older text of unknown origin. The author of these texts is still unknown, and though the supposed angel said it was dictated to Adam by angels, the idea of angels in the Garden of Eden teaching Adam how to summon demons seems inconsistent with the established biblical lore. Is this supposedly cursed coded grimoire actually authored by some sinister and malevolent force? And what purpose was the book intended to fill? The more we learn about this book, the more mysterious it seems to get. Number 2. The Grand Grimoire. Sporting the alternate name of the Gospel of Satan, this 16th century book has the reputation of being one of the most terrifying books on occultism ever written. The book is filled with instructions to summon not only demons, but the devil himself in order to sell your soul to Old Scratch. It describes in great details the rituals that will let you call forth Lucifer, Beelzebub, Astaroth, as well as 6 lesser demons, and also contains spells that will, among other things, let you win the lottery, talk to spirits, make someone fall in love with you, and turn yourself invisible. The book's ritual instructions are very intense, with some spells calling for house pets like cats to be sacrificed and skinned and popped into a pot. The original copy of this book is currently being kept under lock and key in the Vatican archives, but other versions are available for purchase. such as the Kindle version, which you can own for $1.75, which is a great deal for something that will apparently let you turn invisible and then win the lottery. Of course, the additional cost of your pet cat and your soul may add up. The name of the original author is unknown. However, legends and rumors state that the author wrote the text while being possessed by the devil, which I suppose makes him Satan's ghostwriter. Number 1. The Voynich Manuscript. The Voynich Manuscript is a coded book that was believed to have been written at some point in the early 15th century. It was discovered in a locked chest in Rome in the year 1912, and deciphering its history and, more importantly, its meaning has been a goal of several different scholars for many years before and since. Its first known owner was believed to be Rudolph II. Rudolph apparently thought that the mysterious book had been written by Roger Bacon, and purchased the book for a huge amount of money, roughly 600 ducats of gold. The first 100% confirmed owner of the text was an alchemist named George Barish, who found the mysterious book in his personal library, unsure of its origin. It was passed from him to a variety of scholars, emperors, and officials, all of whom failed to decipher its bizarre text and illustrations. Several of the world's best cryptographers from the First and Second World War have tried to decipher its 240 pages, and have not found any way to read the book. Some of the pictures include detailed sketches of plants that are not found in nature, and zodiac signs. As you might expect, there are several theories about the purpose and the author of this book, with some believing that it was a herbology text written in a lost shorthand, and others having more outlandish theories that it was created by aliens from another world. One theory is that the book was written by either a demon or the devil himself, and that anyone who manages to translate its contents will unleash a curse upon the world. A theory they believe is bolstered by the fact that several people who have attempted a translation have gone on to suffer several years of bad fortune. Whether the origin of this book is human or demonic in nature, it is still the most mysterious and curiosity-inducing book in human history.
Coming in at number 5, we have The Pilo Family Circus by Will Elliott. Clowns have already been ruined by the likes of John Wayne Gacy, Pennywise, and even the guy from Poltergeist, so why not tarnish their reputation even more? The Pilo Family Circus by Will Elliott is the book to do just that. Following the story of Jamie, a regular 20-something-year-old from Australia, we're introduced to a fantastical world where ordinary and extraordinary collide. Jamie finds himself being stalked by a trio of sadistic clowns, Gonko, Doopy, and Goshi. He's given an ultimatum: you have 2 days to pass your audition. You better pass it, fella. You're joining the circus, ain't that the best news you ever got? He's then kidnapped and dragged headfirst into an alternate universe where the Pilo Family Circus lives, between hell and earth. The ringleader of the operation is Kurt Pilo, a 7-foot monster with talons and a knack for collecting teeth. With grotesque circus folk running rampant and savagery considered the norm, Jamie transforms into JJ the Killer Clown. Its carnivalesque imagery and dark themes would make for a visually appealing movie. Its storyline, though could come off as cheesy, is certainly unique and has enough depth to intrigue audiences. In the hands of the right director, the Pilo Family Circus would make an incredible feature film. I'm here for it. Give me them clowns. Coming in at number 4, we have Insomnia by Stephen King. It seems impossible that there are more Stephen King novels out there that haven't been adapted for TV or film, but believe me, there are plenty. We've seen It, The Shining, The Mist, Carrie, the list goes on and on. One novel that horror movie enthusiasts are missing out on is Stephen King's Insomnia, and we want this film made. What makes this book really fun is that it's connected to so many of the other pieces of work. The novel is set in Derry, Maine, the same town that Pennywise the Clown terrorized in It. Mike Hanlon, a character from It, even makes an appearance. Insomnia also closely related to his series The Dark Tower, with mentions of the antagonist, the Crimson King. The novel follows Ralph Roberts, who begins to suffer from insomnia after his wife's death. As his lack of sleep worsens, Ralph's sanity comes into question when he begins experiencing things that are invisible to others. He's now able to see people's aura, and these beings he refers to as little bald doctors. Ralph comes to the conclusion that these are not hallucinations, and his friend Lois Chase also admits to seeing the same things. The pair confront 2 of these little bald doctors, Clotho and Lachesis, who are there to preserve the natural order of death. They learn that the 3rd Doctor, Atropos, is more interested in killing people and serving the Crimson King. Ralph finds himself in the middle of a battle between the forces of the purpose and the random. The novel features some high action moments that would translate well onto the big screen, like the threat of a an aeroplane that's intended to crash into the Derry Civic Center. Insomnia is certainly more of a fantasy/horror film drawing heavily from Greek mythology, but it could certainly add a little more weirdness and spice to the horror genre.
In number 3, we have The Orphan Story. Written in the early 1600s by Martin de Leon Cardenas, The Orphan Story is a novel about a 14-year-old Spaniard who heads to the Americas in search of, fortune. While it may sound like a normal adventure story and an outlier amongst the magic books today, a major darkness lurks within its pages that led to the novel not being published until 2018. The first draft was a 328-page manuscript, slightly yellowed, slightly worn and aged, and missing a couple of pages. It is handwritten in a decorative style reflective of the Golden or Imperial Age. The New Age print takes on a more modern bound look, featuring artwork from the original manuscript on the front, yet a rather plain book from that, the past. Belinda Palacios, a Peruvian scholar who edited the book for 2 years, says that she was warned by multiple people about the orphan story. It was first said to appear in 1621 under the pen name of Andres de Leon, but never made it to the press due to the presidential atmosphere at the time in Sicily. The manuscript then sat in the Hispanic Society of America until 1965 when Belinda rediscovered it. She learned that many attempts to publish the orphan story had happened, giving rise to rumors that malevolent energy lurked among the almost 400 pages, causing the people working on it to die. In an interview, she commented on the reported deaths, saying one was from a strange disease, another in a car accident, and yet another something else. Belinda had also heard from other professors she was working with to publish the book, one specialized in colonial letters from the Andean regions in Mexico, who was named Raquel Chang Rodriguez. So those letters described how Antonio Rodriguez Menino and William C. Bryant both died before finishing their editions of the book, and is why the manuscript is believed to be cursed or bewitched. They told her that the book was cursed, and the reason it had taken so long to publish was that anyone who worked on it would die in mysterious ways. Did the powers that be not want the ancient script out in the world? Note to self, don't go within 10 feet of the book. Not worth it. In second place, we have the book of Abramelin the Mage. Most folks, today would be happy with a gift card or dinner for their birthday, but Abramelin the Mage decided to give his son a book full of mythical curses. It's definitely a unique gift. So this book tells the story of an Egyptian mage named Abraham, or Abramelin, who taught a system of magic to Abraham of Worms, a Jew in Worms, Germany. The system of magic from this book regained popularity in the 19th and 20th centuries, partly due to Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mather's translation, which dubbed it the Book of Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage. Ever since it was translated to English, this 15th century novel has had a reputation for being cursed. Now there are several theories why, but most believe it has to do with the mage's belief that everybody has their own unique personal demon. Throughout the book, there are instructions for rituals and supernatural feats to bring your demons under control. Anyone with any sense knows that it's risky to reach out and communicate with the spirit world, so it's not surprising that readers of this book have reported bad luck and hauntings by spirits from another realm. The grimoire is framed as a sort of epistolary novel or autobiography in which Abraham of Worms describes his journey from Germany to Egypt and reveals Abramelin's magical and Kabbalistic secrets to his son Lamech. Internally, the text dates itself to the year 1458. The story involves Abraham passing his magical and Kabbalistic secrets onto his son and tells, how he acquired his knowledge. Abraham recounts how he found Abramelin the Mage living in the desert outside of an Egyptian town, Iraqi, which borders the Nile. Abraham's home sat atop a small hill surrounded by trees. He was an Egyptian mage and taught a powerful form of Kabbalistic magic to Abraham. He was a, venerably aged man, very courteous and kind, discussing only the fear of God, the importance of leading a well-regulated life, and the evils of the acquisition of riches and goods. The usual fare. Abramelin extracted a promise from Abraham that he would give up his false dogmas and live in the way and law of the Lord. He then gave Abraham 2 manuscript books to copy for himself, asking for 10 gold florins, which he took with the intention of distributing to 72 poor persons in Iraqi. Upon his return 15 days later, after having disposed of the payment money, Abramelin extracted an oath from Abraham to serve and fear the Lord, and to live and die in his most holy law. After this, Abraham was given the divine science and true magic embedded with the 2 manuscripts, which he was to follow and give to only those whom he knew well. The book exists in the form of 12 manuscripts and an early printed edition. The early manuscripts are 2 versions that date from around 1608, are written in German, while another 2 manuscripts date from about 1700 and 1750 respectively. The practical magic found in both Book 3 of the French text and Book 4 of the German original centers around a set of talismans composed of magical word squares. These are similar to traditional magic squares, though the latter are usually composed of numbers, while Abramelin's squares contain letters. Commonly, word squares are used as puzzles or as teaching aids for students. In this context, though, the focus becomes mystical, so that each square should contain words or names that relate to the magical goal of the square. A parallel is found in the famous Satyr Arepo Tenet opera Rotos Word Square, an altered version of which is also found among Abraham's squares. Curse book and math puzzles? Yeah, no thanks. In first place, we have Untitled Grimoires. I feel like that should be scary enough on its own, but time to elaborate. These manuscripts were believed to be written in the early 1900s, as their first library appearance was around the 1920s. The books originated when a Wiccan high priestess called Persephone Adrastea Irene recorded her family's spiritual history of being an American witch of Swedish and English ancestry. These manuscripts record Persephone's witchy history that she reworked all through her adult life, incorporating her mother's grimoire into them as well. Their first book contains around 250 pages of spells, incantations, curses, and enchantments, as well as corresponding information on gems, planets, rites, potions, and even exorcisms. The second book includes around 150 to 200 pages of alchemy and chemistry recipes, cures, perfumes and balms, nerve tonics, and even hairspray recipes. The first book is believed to carry the curse heavier than its counterpart, as Persephone's spells are believed in Wiccan culture to contain more power than most other records due to the embodiment of herself within them. Originally, the books belonged to Alice Montserrat, the wife of Israel Regardie, who moved to the UK in the 1920s to work with famous occult writer Aleister Crowley. Later on, they both went on to work with the Golden Dawn Order and printed their works and publications as occultism raised into the modern world. Although Montserrat did little reporting on the cursed lore over these books, she did make notes as to why she and others within the order believed the curse carried some serious weight. She made a note to an inscription warning all those who read it, saying, "To those not of the craft, the reading of this book is forbidden. Proceed no further, or justice will exact a swift and terrible retribution, and you will surely suffer at the hand of the craft." This was written in not only English, but other languages as well, to ensure the reader be heavily warned to, keep away. To this day, copies of the Untitled Grimoires can be bought from M. Benjamin Catt's fine books. They still come with a high warning for all non-believers within Wiccan or pagan beliefs, to shy away from them because of the cursed lore within and surrounding their pages. As tempting as it might be to acquire a copy, since that is a place I could technically travel to, I don't want to risk fate. My life's crazy enough.